Good evening, gentle listener, and welcome to the Unfiltered Mind, where hosts Graham and Hayden explore fascinating and thought-provoking topics, sparking curiosity and thoughtful discussion among listeners. Through these open-minded discussions, the Unfiltered Mind seeks to inspire a deeper understanding of the world and reason as a whole, while fostering civility and connection in an age of division.
Welcome to the Unfiltered Mind, episode 5. 5?
I think so.
Alright, dang. So today we're going to be talking about some change and talking about if it's really one of those things where, everybody talks about how everybody hates change and whatnot. Should we? What are your starting opinions on that?
The idea of hating change, obviously most of us don't like change.
Yeah.
It seems to be a natural human reaction to change for some reason.
Yeah.
And the reasons behind it, I'm not 100% sure why we don't like change. So we obviously like what's normal. We stick to what's normal.
Yeah.
We have routines and activities and everything that we could think of. We want it to stay the same forever. We don't want to grow up. We don't want to get older. We don't want to have to do extra work as we progress through our lives. We don't like to have to retire or.
Do you think that perchance it's I don't know, we mentioned this in a class I've been taking, kind of pushing back the entropy that is trying to grab our bodies. It's we're just keep it normal, keep it straight. That way you just kind of subconsciously avoid death. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and that's an interesting idea, as we avoid change because we want to avoid death. Because we feel like change brings death closer.
Yeah. And I mean, in a way it's true.
In a way it's true, yeah. As you are, most change is caused by progression of time.
Yeah.
And progression of time.
I would dare say all change is progression of time. Actually, everything is progression of time, but
name one thing that exists outside of the progression of time other than God.
There is none. Literally nothing. Or at least nothing to the human knowledge yet.
One day we may know.
One day. I think it's also interesting because I think that we don't really like how much we are creatures of habit, but we just kind of take it as a given, So, for example, you walk into a class in high school and you have a bunch of people coming in for the first day, and Tony sits next to Darren because they're friends and whatnot, and they kind of traditionally sit in the second row. And then before you know it, other things like that start happening, and suddenly you have basically the roster you're going to have for the rest of the semester, no matter if there's assigned seats or not, because everybody just sits in the same place twice because, well, why would I change it? And it's not something that we necessarily ever question. It's just oh yeah, I'm just going to sit in the same spot because why wouldn't I? So it seems like we have mental inertia of some kind, It's once we've done something once, it's easier to do it again.
Yeah, I think that might boil down to that we're creatures of not only habit, but comfort as well. And change typically leads to uncomfort or lack of what we're used to comfort-wise. So, for example, you're I sit in the second row every day. That's where I'm comfortable. The professor knows I'm going to be sitting there. I know I'm going to be sitting there. The person next to me says hi when I sit down.
Mm-hmm.
You then move, and you're all of a sudden, this is uncomfortable. I don't know what I'm doing here. The professor is at a different angle. This person next to me doesn't know me anymore.
Yeah. It is wildly fascinating, though, because you talk about how people really, really, really dislike change. And I was reading a book over break, and it was talking about this certain bias that is known in psychology because basically people refuse or have a higher likelihood of rejecting something and staying in a current poor situation because they know it well than risking that position to possibly go to an either higher or lower situation. They need to be confident that it's going to be better. And otherwise, they're just going to stay in their position, which is like, and I wonder how far that would go, because I'm fairly sure, like, if you took somebody in like the worst situation, they're going to risk anything to get out of it. I mean, at least that's what I would logically say. But there again, we're such creatures of habit. It's like, I don't know.
Well, to go against that, though, there are examples of people within impoverished situations that you could be like, well, can't you have done this to get out of it? But they just don't, because they're comfortable with where they're at. It's a change they're not willing to make, or potentially an effort they're not willing to make. I don't know. Sometimes making change good requires a little bit of, like, uh,
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also a double-sided coin. So you think about like these poor tribes in Africa, right? Um, and they have nothing. They live in shacks and don't have basic necessities. Clean water is a rarity and stuff like that. But yet, I hear time and time and time again people who go and visit these people for mission trips or hospitality type stuff. Every time they come back and they're like, those are the most joyful people I've ever met. And it's just because that's life. May as well make the best of it. And so I think it's part of human nature to kind of buckle down with whatever you're given and make the most of it. So I think that that's a positive of human nature in some circumstances, but there again, it can kind of hinder you in grand terms of, let's go figure out what I need to do with my life and such.
And that brings up an interesting, like, controversy. Is change, like, actually a good thing? So, for example, if we were to go to these tribes in Africa and then set up a modern hospital or medical clinic, we have all of this new technology, but would that change actually be beneficial for them? Would they still be just as happy, as joyful, as fulfilled in their life if we were to bring the change of the modern world to them?
Yeah, it is interesting because like you talked about earlier, we have a certain threshold of comfort in our daily lives. And we talk about how, take like a white collar businessman, for example. He's a lawyer at some fancy firm or something. And, he is in AC and has all this banking stuff, has Lamborghinis out his ears, and yet is still struggling with, the pressures of his job and being lonely, which is, that's a whole other topic. And all of this stuff. And yet he doesn't find as much joy in life with those comforts as this poor little child in Africa who's, know nothing but dirt and beating sun for their entire lives. And you look at that, and it's just like, it just doesn't add up logically. It's like, how does this work? It's something I really enjoy thinking about. It's just odd.
Yeah, it truly is a interesting phenomenon that we see. I think for the, sort of the main question of this video is change good or bad, or should we accept change for what it is?
Yeah.
I think for a quick answer to that question is it depends.
I think a quick answer is you don't have a choice.
But not all change is forced upon you.
That's fair.
Some change becomes from personal choice, but then is it a change or a decision?
Yep. Because, like, for example, I mean, change is basically inevitable in some regard. You're gonna grow up. You're gonna, get older, and suddenly your joints are gonna be crap, and that's really unfortunate. But it's just kind of thrust upon you, like, here, life's free gift, courtesy of elderliness. And so you don't necessarily have a choice in that. And that's where, getting to buckle down and being like, okay, let's make the best of this. Let's enjoy this as much as we can. Versus, staying in a terrible job situation where you have, you're not friends with anybody, you feel completely alone, your boss is a jerk, and your pay is subpar. Yeah, get out of there. That's a change that I think most of us would be willing to take, or most people, I guess. And so it's interesting for me to think about the risk reward of change and where to draw the line between most people accepting it and most people not.
Well, if we're assuming change is sort of an inevitable fate, then I think for some reason a lot of people tend to sort of push back against it, but since they can't get away from it, then they just tend to get mad or depressed or cause extra anxiety and stress, or even just, try to reverse it, like people who try to live forever or that kind of thing.
And I think that that's a happiness stealing way of living life. You think about these people who are doing like what you're doing, and once they try to accomplish these almost impossible feats, they wound up dejected and unimpressed with their work because, well, it failed. Not surprisingly. I mean, the fountain of youth has been a myth since basically the beginning of time. I mean, you think of the story of Gilgamesh and that weird flower that did something or another. I don't even know, man. But people are always striving to undo unpleasant change. And it's an odd concept where we're trying to embrace this, positive change and whatnot. I mean, every New Year's is an example of that, Oh, I'm going to fix my life. I'm going to do this new stuff, get in the gym, go be more disciplined and connect with more people or whatever. And then, yet, if bad change happens, we're immediately on that trying to reverse it, I think just to a degree, some of that is reasonable. You think about joint pain when you get older. Yeah, fix it, if you can. But it's not necessarily like trying to strive to fix things that you can't fix is problematic.
Yeah, and I think the idea of fixing the things that you feel are negative changes instead of embracing them and making the most out of them is sort of like we always have this desire to either reverse time or just get out of time.
Yeah.
Like we spend all of this time like, de-aging or wishing to go back to a previous state. Like we're always reminiscing about the past or I guess even looking to the future at some extent.
Yeah.
And instead of living in the present. And I think that's sort of a, negative effect of not embracing change as it comes.
Yeah. I would say, like in everything that I've realized that we've been talking about, it's gray. You think about these, let's say there's a 6-year-old, right, who is sure that she is going to be a princess in a big, marvelous castle someday. And that just makes her happy to think about. And that it's not something she obsesses over. It's not something she worries about. It's not something that she's like actively saving up her, investments in 401k to be able to afford all of the materials and all this stuff to be able to build this castle. It's literally just something that she enjoys thinking about, versus, a entrepreneur who starts out this business is like, I need to get to 6 figures. I need to make this business fly now, and starts obsessing over that. And it's not reasonable. Well, really, neither of those were reasonable dreams or goals or expectations. but one was positive and one wasn't, you know? One
Yeah.
just caused more stress and the other was just a source of happiness.
Hmm. And that comes to an interesting idea that I had of whether or not we should. So we do tend as a culture to obsess over the past a lot.
Hmm.
But I think to some extent, obsessing over the past, well, obsessing is a strong word. Obsessing over the past is probably not a good thing for the most part. But
Yeah.
sometimes, like, there's no reason to forget the past.
Yeah.
The past is a good way to learn about things, to, somebody else made a mistake in the past and you're not willing to do it again. And I also think that the past can be used as a way to bring happiness to the present,
Hmm.
as in you can bring back, happy memories,
Yeah.
fond memories, but there's no need to like obsess over them like, oh, I wish I could go back to those good times. There's no point in that.
Yeah.
Or you should be willing to live in the present and be fully, you know, engaging in your current circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, as Christians, we're looking forward to the future we have in heaven, but we're not also obsessing over the future like, oh, I need to be able to do this tomorrow and whatnot. Like, there's no point in like stressing over the future because we don't really know what the next day is going to hold for us.
Yeah. So, in the grand scheme of things, what would you say is a healthy dose of looking to the future for, hope and happiness and whatnot without obsessing over it into the present? What's a healthy amount of living in the present but looking to forward and back in time to help with the current present, kind of build it up, if you will?
Yeah, I think the distinction to make is as long as you're not wishing you could either go back to a different time or go forward to a different time, and the sole purpose of either reminiscing over the past or looking forwards to the future is that you're either learning from like potentially mistakes or good things people have done in the past and willing to apply them to your present circumstance, or reminiscing over happy memories and stuff to bring joy to your current state in your present time. But if you're, say, reminiscing over these happy times and all you want is to go back to those times,
Yeah.
like, it's not possible. It's only going to cause you anxiety, stress, heartbreak,
Yeah.
whatever you could name. And then obviously looking towards the future, you're never going to get to the future if you don't build up your present.
That's fair. I so are Let me see if I'm understanding you correctly. So you're kind of saying like a good way of going about this is not wanting to act to bring either the past or future into the present, but rather looking to them as like kind of an overall goal, not necessarily like something that has to be here and now right this second.
Yeah, for a general idea, I think the maybe a good way of putting it is using the past to shape the present, and
Huh.
using the past shaping the present as the foundation for creating the future.
I think I understand that.
Yeah, and so you're not necessarily building the present. I mean, the whole point of building the present is to build the future,
Yeah.
essentially, to some extent, not entirely. There's
Yeah.
some negatives to saying that, but there's no point of obsessing over the future. Like, you want, say you're a kid and you're like, one day I want to be an adult. Like, you really want to get to being an adult. Like, that's all you want. There's no, like, you're just obsessing over the future. You're neglecting the gift of the present, of
Mm-hmm.
being a kid, of being a teenager, whichever one it be.
Yeah.
You're neglecting the benefits of living in that time. Like, most adults would be like, I wish I could go back and be a teenager.
Yeah.
Then you're neglecting the present of being an adult, the
Yeah.
privileges, the good things that come of being an adult, and wishing you could go back to being a kid. Now, obviously, both of them are good things, but both of them are for their own seasons.
So what would you say to the sadness kind of, or sadness and excitement combo of like kind of switching eras in life? So like for example, when you graduate high school, it's like you get this kind of rush thinking about, okay, well, my childhood is more or less over, and I'm now, or like turning 18 especially, I'm now an adult, and I can vote and purchase a rifle. There you go. Like, those are the defining characteristics of adulthood right there. But you get this kind of mixed sense of, oh my gosh, I can't wait for what comes next. But at the same time, it's like, dang, I kind of miss fourth grade. So what would you say to that? What does that tell us about humans, I guess?
Yeah,
Nature.
I think it is an interesting conundrum because obviously there's you don't want to be too obsessive over the past. I know I've used that word a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it's necessarily wrong to sort of be sad that you're leaving an era. Um, and I also think it's not a bad thing to be excited for the future either.
Hmm.
Um, as long as neither one of them are like over the top, like shaping everything you live in. Like you're so sad about leaving high school that you can't continue in the present, or it's causing issues like, I don't know, depression or those kind of things, or being so excited about the future that you can't wait
Yeah.
to the point where it's also causing lack of sleep or something,
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
actually causing issues in the present, but neither one of them are bad enough in and of themselves. And I think it's actually a good thing to have both of those feelings because obviously emotionless humans are pretty much useless.
Bold claim, but okay.
Okay, everyone experiences emotions. We've already covered this.
Fair. But still, you basically just said the equivalent of sociopaths are useless to human society, and I'm really not sure what to do about that. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd say emotion is pretty important. Sorry, never mind. I digress. But so I think it's also interesting when you, for example, I had a friend who I talked to, I think over the summer, question mark? I don't know. But he was really struggling with a past relationship he had been in. And it was not healthy for him. I can tell you that straight off the bat with 100% confidence. And he knows it as well. It's just the simple happy moments of that, and kind of the realization that it's been a couple years since that all went down. It's just kind of looking back over your life and seeing all these closed chapters and just being like, dang, that time right there was pretty good. So I'd say that it can inspire us to go forward, and change our present to that. For example, um, maybe, and I understand that this will be a complete, uh, what's it called? Re- reduction, reductionistic approach, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe you want to instill some of the things that you miss from that old relationship into a new one or something like that. And I know it's a lot more complicated than that because, well, people are different and whatnot, but I think it is a good part that we've touched on quite a bit. Um, how the past and future can influence the present to a healthy degree. You
Yeah.
know. So as to change as a whole, um, I think that it's good to take it when you can. One of my dad's friends gave me some really wise advice, and he talked about seeing life as an adventure and taking the risk when you can. Because as Christians, what's the absolute worst thing that can happen? You die.
Express trip to heaven.
Exactly. And so we have that hope, we have that grounding. Um, and so there's really no major concern. Um, Now, granted, you can also make stupid, poor decisions, so please, please do not go out and just shoot shots of heroin for sun up to sundown. No, like there are productive ways to use your life in ways that are exciting and fun, and go travel the world. Use some hard-earned money that you used or that you got, and go on a cruise or something like that. Live life to the fullest.
Experience some new things,
Yeah.
eat different foods, try different activities, jump off a cliff with a, what's it called? Bungee jumping or paragliding or something.
That's a key thing to say after that sentence.
Yes,
But
we do not recommend jumping off a cliff without a parachute, paraglider, bungee cords,
some sort of safety equipment to ensure that you're not going to go kasplat. But
or
it's
ride a
also
roller coaster.
fair. That's another interesting thing to bring up is the whole thing about risk. Some people hate passionately all of those activities because it brings you to the very edge of death itself and then just like springs you back. It's like, haha, this is what it could have been, but it's not. And so I find it really funny the degree of risk that different people are willing to take. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Like,
it's also funny because that's almost like I think paradox would be a correct word, but people take risks without realizing it. Like every time you get in the car, it's a big risk actually.
oh yeah, I was reminded of that recently. And the thing is, you get this also false sense of control in a lot of different areas of life. You think, as long as I don't do anything wrong, nothing bad's going to happen to me. Well, I have someone I know through family connections and whatnot. Um, he was a teacher, and it's it's just awful. I mean, the amount of stuff that has happened to him, he's done nothing wrong at all. But stomach cancer, back to his wife wanting a divorce, back to losing his room in the Helene floods, and a bunch of precious memories in there and stuff like that. And it's just like, you didn't have to do anything wrong, and this just hits you like a freight train. Um, and so,
It's like the Book of Job.
yeah, exactly. And it's like you have no control. It's just you don't realize your blessings until you don't have them. Um, and for everyone listening, this is your daily reminder to take a deep breath in, swallow, and just be like, that didn't hurt. I can breathe. I don't have crap in my lungs right now. Thank God I'm not sick. I think that's a fairly basic thing that we take for granted. But the fact that I can just go, and it doesn't hurt is wonderful. And my kidneys are functioning normally, and I have a liver, and my lungs are doing oxygen things. Man, that's wonderful. Because so many people would fight anything just to get one more day where they can breathe like this, get one more day where they could think as clear as this, or have this opportunity to be here and to chat with people. I think earlier this week I was reminded of something getting back on school grounds was connection. It's so much fun. I mean, it's actually incredible the happiness I got from just being able to get back and see, oh, I know that person, and I know that person, and I know that person. And it did cause me to think about, people who take those risks unknowingly, um, never take a second to kind of refocus, if you will, and just be like, dang, that's a lot of blessings. And it, I guess, all ties back to the gratitude episode that we did a while back. Just being able to sit back and be grateful for life is such a hidden treasure these days.
Yeah, and that goes back to, treasuring the present
Yeah.
and being willing to live in your current circumstances, be grateful for what you've been given, what the past has created, but not, desiring to constantly go back to what you used to have, but
Yeah.
being grateful for what you have now and actually, remembering what you have now
Yeah.
and potentially even like the hardships that were brought it about.
Yeah. I'm curious, just your opinion. It doesn't have to be something you know a ton about, because few people do, unless they are weird like me. Not saying I know everything about it, but you talked about using the present well, um, and that always brings the stock market to mind for me, because you think about, okay, well, I have these couple dollars that I was going to spend on a pack of gum. Let's invest that, and I I do stuff with Robinhood and whatnot, which is just basic
Yeah.
stuff, and it's just dollar here, dollar here, dollar here. But over time, it grows, man. And so, what's your opinion on people who should be balancing risk and reward with the stock market, especially?
I mean, I think it's actually. I know I was saying that earlier you shouldn't focus on the future too much,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it's a wrong focus to build up, money via long term investments like stocks.
Oh yeah,
Like, sure, you can do day trading or whatever and, flip stuff daily, but that's a
yeah.
lot of work and it's
Oh
not
my
as much of a
gosh,
long term
it's
investment.
expensive. It's so expensive.
Well, you pay a lot of taxes.
You pay a lot
Well,
of
you don't pay a
taxes.
lot of taxes, but they build up over time.
Yeah.
And
Well,
also, your investment margins are going to be very, very slim most of the time.
that's
Like you
fair.
put in $1, you might get $1.01 back, and then a hundredth of that cent is taxed.
Yep. But also, you have to keep a minimum of $20,000 in your account or something. And it's like, at my age, I don't know. Maybe other people out there are filthy rich or something like that, and just have a spare $20,000 lying around. I don't have that. Therefore, day trading's off the table for me.
Yeah.
You can get I've already been flagged for day trading because I got really into the stock market and didn't realize that was a thing that exists, and now my account's being watched or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, but for the most part, stocks are long-term investment
Yeah,
that you would, keep for a long time, and then you'd use that money for larger purchases in the future, or just having money in the future.
yeah,
And I think although we're not to live as if we're already in the future, I think we still need to prepare for the future, even though we're never guaranteed another day.
yeah,
But we should still be prepared because that would be throwing away what we've been given, essentially. If we
yeah.
always lived as I'm gonna give everything I have every day, like you would be a completely, broken person.
Yeah, totally.
Although that some people do give away everything they have every day, and they're the happiest people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Um, in terms of taking care of yourself in the present with a futuristic mindset. Sorry, that sounds weird, but with a mind toward your future self. Um, obviously getting a job is important. You should get a job. There you go. Go work and get some money. I think that's the first step of anything with starting this. Um, but at the same time, okay, well, what prevents you from putting $500,000 in a tin can and burying it in the backyard and just having it for just in case, versus taking it out and living life with it. So where would you balance the risk and reward of you know investing it in Tesla or something like that, something super volatile that I saw for a while and was like, ooh, that's spiky. And I was like, I'm not going to touch that personally. And then my friend went into it and made $300 in 2 weeks. $300 in 2
Well,
weeks.
if you had invested $100 in NVIDIA 4 years ago, it'd be worth almost $1,000 now.
Yeah, that's just wild. I mean, that's just thinking, dang, if I would have just done it then. The same with the pandemic, man. If I had just been old enough to invest during the pandemic, I could have made bank. But alas.
Or if you had bought a Bitcoin like 15 years ago.
Oh yeah, I saw a thing that was really, really funny. It said it was some prize for competitions or whatever, and it was like first place $500, second place $100, third place $50, fourth and fifth place 25 Bitcoin.
Which would be worth like 2.5 million.
I know, I know. And so it was just like, dang. Another thing after that, thinking kind of switching gears a little bit is your health. You think about everybody's New Year's resolution to go back to the gym, and then they stay there for an entire 2 months, maybe.
I was gonna say, did they make it that far?
Yeah. And then it's just like, nope. So, what would you say about investing into your health? Because I think a lot of the problems that people have been starting to figure out is an organic apple that's good for you, and I'm going to say not genetically modified because, well, genetic modification is still weird. But as far as, food goes, I could get an entire Wendy's $5 biggie bag for the same price that I could get one apple. Like, duh, I'm going to go for the Wendy's. It's more food, it's more calories, cheaper, and it's not as good for you, but oh well, So, at what point do you have to kind of just bite the bullet and take care of yourself with the food you eat,
Well, it's kind of funny because like you'll go to the doctor and they'll be like, "Oh, you need more of this, you need more of that, you need more of that, you need less of that," and I'm like, "How is this such a modern problem? Is our food really this bad?"
Yeah, no, it is. It totally is. It's completely genetically, well, I say genetically modified because it's been an issue for a lot of different things. There's been papers out and studies out and whatnot about how the fact that we are genetically modifying our food has kind of messed up the natural order of things or whatever. So it's like harder for our bodies to process and harder to get the nutrients out of it that we need, which I don't know about that. I know that's super controversial because at the same time you can make, one thing of corns feed an entire village, and they fixed up massive vitamin A deficiency with like genetically modified rice. So, it has the potential to do really, really good things, but at the same time, it's just, I think if you can, you should try to go for those whole foods that you know where they came from, with ingredients that you can pronounce, which is typically a good thing. I mean, unless it's like some foreign language, because, for example, I couldn't pronounce kimchi for the longest time, but it's wonderful for you. So, at what point do you kind of take it into your own hands to be like, I need to eat well, and where do supplements come into that,
Well, it's kind of funny because we're always going more and more processed instead of less.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, were people in ancient times like terribly unhealthy? I mean, to an extent they were, but they were also able to, live, and they weren't like necessarily okay. To some extent, yes, there were disease problems, but did we really fix those problems with the modern processing of food, or did we just cause new ones?
Yeah, That's fair. I mean, gonna be honest, it doesn't take that hard of a look at the human life expectancy over the last, couple thousand years to be like, we're living in pretty solid times. Because, well, we have clean water, and clean water is a delicacy.
Yeah.
And most people need to drink more water, which is another whole problem. But you talk about how people often go for the most economical solution in name of saving money in order to maintain that side of their future self versus investing in the current bodily future of themselves. And so I'm still trying to figure out where to draw that line for myself. Here, we're at college, and we have the dining hall, but like sometimes the dining hall is subpar and in health wise, And so, okay, well, when do I take it upon myself to go to Walmart and buy some pistachios to snack on instead of, just grabbing some extra chips from the dining hall and putting them in a to-go box and just using those as a snack, Um, it's something I've been struggling with for a while, and I really don't know where to draw that line well, but just been stuff I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
What's your opinion?
That's a good point. And yes, it is important to take care of your food health, but also physical like exercise can also help you just as much, if not more, than food.
Yeah.
So, and obviously, there will be points in time in your life where it's just going to be really, really hard to eat healthy. Like, say you're always on the road or something.
Yeah.
It'll take you a lot of extra time and money. Where, I mean, if you would have the money if you invested that $100 in the video 4 years ago, but
yeah, for sure.
But like, for the average person, always keeping healthy food on stock is a little bit more expensive and time consuming, or you maybe have to do a lot of extra prep work instead of throwing something in the microwave or opening a bag.
Yeah. And it's also, it requires discipline. You grab a thing of bananas or something like that, and bananas are fairly inexpensive. I saw a sale when I was back home and it was like 76 cents for a pound of banana. And I was like, oh, that's a great deal. Let's grab some bananas. They don't tell you they go bad in like a week.
Bananas
and so
are,
it's really hard to keep up with the fresh fruit. Whereas, people used to just kind of eat with the season, and hence winter was terrible. But kill a couple cows, you'll be fine. Man, what a saying to live by. But yeah, so I don't have that discipline yet. So I'm still trying to figure out, okay, this is what it takes to take care of yourself. And also, like you were talking about, it uses more time, but
time is changing. We don't like it.
Yeah. And time is a limited resource. It's a money of sort.
We are vividly aware of the ticking time that's left in our lives.
Yeah.
We are always constantly aware that we have a deadline that eventually we're going to hit.
Yeah, and if you don't, I am fully positive that you can find something online that's like the little sheet that you can print out. It's only a 1-page sheet, which is really scary, but it's the months of your life if you live to 90 or something like that. Or I think one of my high school teachers had the weeks, and it was like 3 pages.
Yeah,
with like over half of it colored in.
It'll be surprisingly short.
Exactly, and it's just like you think about 18 years even, and it's like, dang, that's a long time. As someone now older than that, it's like, oh dang, I have surprisingly few years left, know?
And another thing we also like to think about with the amount of, once you're looking back on the amount of time that's been in your life, you're like, wow, I could have done more.
Exactly.
But and then we like to make resolutions to do more in the future, and yet once we get to the future, we're still gonna be like, I could have done more.
Yeah.
And you'll always be in that never-ending cycle of I can't do enough because I don't have enough time, or I didn't do enough. Why did I waste so much time in the past?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I need to do more and more and more in the future, but how do I do more?
Someone said a quote that I really, really enjoyed. I'm paraphrasing fully, but something about we have the ability now and the ideas later. And it's just like that hits close to home
Yeah.
because there's so many days, like even just a while ago I was sitting in my room like, I have like 3 hours before I go to bed. I have very little homework, or at least homework that needs to be done now. And I've eaten, and I've caught up with people, and I don't know. I have all this spare time, and me in a week is going to be like, you should have worked on this, that, and the other. But I mean, I couldn't recall anything to work on, so I just got on YouTube and watched some nonsense for a while.
Yeah, but when you do have that time, what do you do at that time? Do you, hone a new skill or hone an existing skill? Like, do you get better at, a practice, a hobby, an instrument, any sport or anything? Or do you go read a book, you learn something about the world? Or do you go watch some informational videos on something? Do you learn about something new? Or is any of that really any different in the future than, say, scrolling Instagram? Like, is that going to benefit you enough for you to be in the future be like, that was a good use of time? Or
Yeah.
what can you do in the present moment that even is to you in the future a good use of your time?
I think it also just has a great deal to do with self-image. If you look back on what you've done in the last couple of days and be like, huh, I worked hard. I read that book. I completed that book. For example, I was home over break. My brother got this book for Christmas on speed reading. And I was like, give me that book now. Finished the entire book in 2 days. So I put it to good use. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, learning those skills and practicing, in this specific case, how to speed read and those practices that were taught, it's really, really useful and practical. And I haven't gone a day yet that since I read that basically that I haven't been like, dang, I'm really proud of myself for doing that. That was a good use of time. And I think that there are days that you kind of just sit back and you're like, dang, I did absolutely nothing today. And you kind of just get this kind of disappointed feeling of just like, ugh, I really have not done anything at all. So it's just like, well, where do you put something in that is worth enough to be proud of yourself later for? I
Yeah,
get what you're saying.
we have this funny thing that we do, and I find myself doing this all the time, is that you're never good enough yourself. And it's a really interesting, conundrum that we put ourselves in. Like, it's we can have as many successes and failures, but the failures are always, bad, and the successes are never good enough for us.
Yeah.
And we're always, trying harder and harder, or we just get, disappointed in ourselves and just give up.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I mean, I think that if you don't have the discipline to be able to really buckle down and get reading done and or learn a new hobby or skill or even just something as simple as over Christmas break, I got to play a video game with my brother that I haven't played in a very long time, and I got good again. I spent time grinding for stuff and getting different equipment and gear and stuff like that. It has no impact on my day-to-day life, but I'm still proud of myself for sitting down and doing something, sitting down and doing something that I didn't necessarily want to do at the time, but I did it anyways, you know? The practice of discipline is often the thing that I find that I'm pleased with myself for doing, no matter what it is. If you just sit down and do something that you don't want to do, you're going to feel better about it later than not, normally, typically.
Yeah, but then sometimes you get these circumstances where you could be fairly disciplined. You work on something all the time, but you still never get good enough for yourself. You're always looking for a
Yeah,
higher and higher achievement level. Like you got a success here, but it wasn't good enough. You still want to be better
yeah,
or looking higher, and we always want to get to the top of the ladder.
yeah. And it's also really easy to look around you and be like, dang, I wish I'd done that with my life. For example, I look at the way you play the violin, and pff, I played the violin. I played it in fourth grade, and well, I could have been like a really solid violinist, but due to kind of just some things here, and COVID hit there, and then my teacher died and stuff like that, and it's just thing after thing that if I wanted to, I could have been persistent. I could have practiced. I could have put the time and the effort in to really become good at this instrument that I enjoy a lot. But I didn't, you know? And now I look around at good violinists and it's like, I could have been that. And every time I see that, it's just like, wasted potential.
And then I look at myself and I'm like, I am not very good at this instrument. I you know, if I had practiced more diligently in high school, I could be, better than, the other person over there,
Mm-hmm.
or be playing in this, symphony over here, or something like that. And then you're always like, I'm just not good enough, or
Exactly.
I could have been so much better than I was, even though, for example, you're like, oh, I wish I could be as good as him. I'm like, well, I wish I could be as good as him over there.
Yeah. I think, another important thing to mention is how we were talking about earlier when you're older looking back on your life, give yourself some grace. You know, be willing to accept your achievements for what they are. You know, um, for example, I know that I have a fair bit of connections. I have a good amount of friends and have really tried to pour into those people and to really make them feel loved and appreciated and stuff like that. And I think I do a fairly good job. I'm proud of myself for that. It's worth my time. And so hopefully when I get older, I'll still realize that's valuable, you know? And granted, I poured into a lot of people over the last couple years, and nothing ever really turned out with that friendship. I barely talk to them anymore if I even remember who they are. And so it's this ebb and flow of life where you do the best you can with what you're given in the moment. And then later, you have to figure out how to accept that for what it is. For example, one of my friends is an artist um, who was looking at their work and whatnot that they did a few years back and just talking about it really derogatorily. Like, oh, I could have fixed this here and I could have done this better and I could have, and I just wish I could have done better. And I stopped him and I was like, dude, you need to look at this and be like, okay, well that's how I could improve next time. But this is good. This is wonderful. Because I looked at it and it looked amazing. I mean, I think it was a picture of like a bird or something like that. And it was just incredible. And I was like, that's incredible. How do you not see that? And I was genuinely shocked that they were just like, dude, this is just terrible. I don't understand how I was this bad. It's like, not only was that you 5 years ago without all of the art classes you've taken, all of the experience you've gained, all of this stuff, but it's also really good for what it's worth. So I think learning that skill, and just speaking about learning skills, learning the skill of looking at your work for what it is in another light is crucial for self-esteem, you know?
Yeah, I think it's important to see the big picture, like the progression of time, the, you know, building up of experiences over time,
Yeah,
the building up of skills over time, and then not only just looking at how it's affected the one point of your present, but also the entire timeline that you have, the entire progression of your entire life, and also every other branch that it's touched, the other people, the other institutions, the other anything that it could have ever touched, and how it's affected those, progressions and times, and all of them and how they have touched, and just see the overarching just picture of how just the tiniest things can affect a whole, you know,
the bigness of it.
yeah.
Yeah,
And sure, learning how to speed read might not be that important for the moment, or it could be, but then, it could end up affecting a whole majority of other things out there.
exactly. And I'm a big believer in discipline. It's my theme for the upcoming year, um, and trying to do things that push me to be uncomfortable is something that I hope that I'm going to be proud of myself for doing. Um, and I may or may not, but as for right now, it's what I'm going to do. It's what I think that I have the best chance of looking back on myself later and being like, it was good. And I hope I don't lose that. It's always kind of crazy, especially when you're writing journal entries or stuff and just being like, I'm having to explain my current circumstances, my current choices and behaviors and whatnot to future me with more experience, knowing exactly how this turned out, and could be really happy with me at this moment, or I just made the worst mistake of my life and they're just kind of really mad. So, doing the best that you can with the situation that you have is just an important life skill. So, I think that that'll probably just about be it for this episode. Um, unless you have anything to add.
Nope.
All
Just remember, always look at the past and the present as a good thing and not dwell on the bad.
Yeah. Don't let your other times make you forget about the importance of this one.
Yep.
Also, if there's anything that anyone would like to see in the future, if it's questions or comments or anything, just drop it down in the comment section, and we would absolutely love to take a look at that and have a good chat about it. Anyways, I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day, and we'll see you next time on the Unfiltered Mind.